Welcome to APDesign Digital Tools. In this video we're going to go over the layers a little bit more. Okay, so in layers, I'm just going to pop this off so we can kind of expand it and really take a look at it. In layers you see a lot of options, and I'm going to throw a few objects onto the canvas so we can talk about them a little bit. So I'll just do that a number of times and just using the box. In fact, we'll then just copy that for a bunch of these. Alright, so for whatever reason, Rhino starts you out with this very kind of vanilla layer structure. Whatever this check mark is on is the default layer, or is the current layer, I should say. Currently it's on default. And so all the objects, if we went and checked them under properties, we would see that they're on the default layer. So if I want them on a different layer, I would just select them, choose the layer I want them on, and change object layer. Easy enough. And if I want to start drawing things on a different layer, say now I want to use layer 2, I just double click on it and the checkbox or check mark goes to a different layer. And so now if I make something, it should turn out to be blue or purple, I mean. Alright, so that's how that works. Now the other thing to note is that this layer structure sucks. One, very few things in the world are going to be purple and red unless we paint them, and usually when we're designing originally we're not really thinking about color. We might be thinking about contrast, but we're not thinking about color. Now we probably, and we should be, thinking about material. So if something's light, something is transparent, something is opaque, something is heavy, you should be thinking about those things. So I would say that a better way to set up your layer structure would be about the material you're using. So I like to set up a series of layers that have material properties. So I'm just going to go in and double click on these things and change them to materials that might be used. What I'm doing is clicking and then pausing and clicking again, and that allows me to get into it. So we'll just do wood. And maybe one other. You can also right click and go to rename layer, and I'll change this one to glass. Alright, well, just naming them isn't enough. I actually need to now start changing these properties over here. So I'm going to change the brick to maybe something a little bit more brick-like. Maybe a kind of that color right there. And then I'm going to change the concrete to something maybe a light gray. The metal, maybe that is a kind of a dark gray. The wood, we'll go with something in the kind of tan yellow. And glass, who knows? I'm going to go with a kind of blue color for now, but I probably want to change its properties a little bit more. So let's go ahead and assign a few things. So this will be my concrete. It didn't change that much. This will be my metal. This will be my wood. And say I'll choose this one to be my glass. Alright, so now we start to see the world a little bit more clearly. Like we would see the world. The one exception would be actually this one here. Obviously glass is not opaque. So let's just see how we might begin to consider changing that. Let's go to a rendered mode, and in this we're going to tweak its display. So right now it's everything's showing up as gray, but the outline is showing up as the color of that layer. So let's see what the options are here. Alright, so use object's color. Maybe that's okay. Don't really care about that. So one thing I forgot that I need to actually change rendering in a different way, but I went back to the shaded just to kind of emphasize again that the beauty of this is that you'll be modeling things, and they'll have at least a representation, a palette of what you are actually visualizing for the design. It isn't important that you use material as your layer structure. In fact, there'll often be a time where you'll want to use more of a component-based layering structure. Like I may want to use structure, and I would just basically duplicate that layer. If it's a structure is going to be metal or steel, I might duplicate that layer, so then all of these options in that layer kind of are already formed for me, and then I might call this out as structure, and so then that becomes the default layer for that stuff. Alright, so just to kind of then go back into visualization of say you wanted to make something transparent and visualize that. I went ahead and clicked on and went to rendered. And the other option that isn't shown here, because it's something that I rarely use, is material. So it's a little bit redundant, but I can go in here and I can give the material some properties. I could go as far as even actually giving it a bump map or a texture map, but I'm not going to do that for us right now. I don't think that's the best use of our time. But I will go in and let's go ahead and find that color again for brick. And we don't really need to change anything else. That's fine. And I'm just clicking OK even though it's outside of your screen. And I'll go ahead and do that for these other ones. Alright, so I'm just finding that color that we used before, saying OK. Alright, so and I'll do it real quick for the wood. Maybe something along those lines. Okay, but the one that's really important is the glass. So the glass, I don't know if I really will be using, I'll just do a kind of a light blue. But the really important one is actually to make it like kind of almost transparent. Let's see what 95% does. And so now we can see that that has taken on that property. The other thing you might want to do, and this would be under display, is change edit the object, the surface, and go ahead and call this out as single color for all edges and do the black. And then I'll have to turn on surface edges. And so now we have a fair representation of the world. And this is a great visualization. You might play with how much transparent you really want this. It may be that that's a little bit too much, just because you kind of get the object gets lost a bit. So maybe I'll go with maybe 90%. So now I can start modeling the world using kind of the materials in a very more logical way. Alright, thank you.